On July 10, 2026, the Pentagon's Pursue Transparency Initiative released its fourth tranche of previously classified UAP materials. Buried among dozens of case files was a 58-second infrared video recorded over the Atlantic Ocean in 2020. The footage, captured by a military forward-looking infrared sensor, shows a large, two-tiered object, an apparent structure with distinct upper and lower sections, tracked by a military platform operating under Northern Command. AARO classified the case as unresolved. That single word has ignited fierce debate. But before we argue about what this object is, we need to understand what the sensor data can and cannot tell us. Context matters. The Pursue program, the Pentagon's structured declassification effort for UAP materials, was formalized following pressure from Congress, particularly Senators Gillibrand and Rounds, who co-authored key provisions in the FY 2024 NDAA demanding systematic public release of UAP records. The fourth tranche landed July 10, 2026, containing cases AARO had reviewed but could not resolve. This Atlantic case originated with Northern Command, which forwarded it through standard reporting channels. It was ingested by AARO during the office's 2022-2023 intake period under then-Director Jon Kosloski, and later reviewed under the current leadership of Jon Kosloski. The chain of custody matters because it tells us who touched this data and what data they didn't have. Here's where most commentary goes wrong. A forward-looking infrared sensor detects thermal radiation, heat contrast between an object and its background. It does not measure distance. It does not determine size. It cannot confirm altitude without external reference. The two-tiered structure visible in this footage is a thermal signature pattern, not necessarily a physical geometry. Temperature differentials across an object's surface, atmospheric lensing, or even sensor artifacts can create apparent structural features that don't correspond to actual shape. FLIR is powerful for detection and tracking. It is limited for identification. That distinction is critical, and ignoring it leads to exactly the kind of overclaiming that undermines serious analysis. With those caveats established, what does the footage actually contain? The object displays consistent thermal contrast across the full 58-second capture window. It does not exhibit obvious characteristics of a conventional aircraft: no exhaust plume, no standard navigation heat signature, no visible propulsion source in the infrared band. The two-tiered thermal profile remains stable throughout, suggesting either genuine structural geometry or remarkably consistent atmospheric effect. The tracking platform maintains lock, indicating the sensor operator considered it a real target. But 58 seconds is agonizingly short. Whatever this was, we're seeing a fragment, a keyhole view of an event that likely lasted much longer. This is the case's central problem. A single infrared video, absent corroborating data, cannot support definitive conclusions. Where is the radar data? Northern Command operates some of the most sophisticated radar systems on the planet. Was this object tracked on radar simultaneously? If so, that data would provide range, altitude, velocity, and bearing, transforming a flat thermal image into a three-dimensional event reconstruction. What about multi-sensor correlation, signals intelligence, electromagnetic spectrum analysis, operator testimony, or debriefs? None of this has been released. AARO's classification of unresolved may reflect not mystery, but insufficiency, a case where the available evidence simply couldn't support a determination either way. The word unresolved deserves careful parsing. In AARO's taxonomy, it does not mean alien. it does not mean extraordinary. It means the analytical process did not reach a conclusion. That could indicate genuinely anomalous characteristics. It could equally indicate insufficient data, competing explanations of similar probability, or bureaucratic limitations on the investigation itself. Jon Kosloski testified before the Senate Armed Services Subcommittee in April 2023 that the majority of unresolved cases suffered from data quality issues rather than exhibiting truly anomalous signatures. Whether that assessment applies to this specific case, we don't yet know. But intellectual honesty demands we hold both possibilities simultaneously. On July 14, 2026, 4 days after the tranche release, Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb announced that his Galileo project team would conduct an independent analysis of the Atlantic footage. Loeb, who has been both celebrated and criticized for his willingness to engage publicly with UAP evidence, stated that modern computational imaging techniques could potentially extract additional information from the infrared data, including constraints on object size and distance through atmospheric absorption modeling. This is plausible. Atmospheric transmission characteristics in specific infrared bands can, under certain conditions, provide rough range estimates. But Loeb's analysis will face the same fundamental limitation. A single sensor, 58-second clip, is a thin foundation for extraordinary claims. His involvement raises the profile of the case. Whether it raises the resolution remains to be seen. This case illuminates a deeper structural issue in UAP transparency. The Pursue program releases materials, but it releases them selectively and often without the contextual data necessary for independent analysis. Researchers receive video, but not radar. They receive imagery, but not operator reports. This creates a paradox. Enough information to generate public interest, not enough to satisfy scientific scrutiny. Whether this represents legitimate classification concerns, protecting sensor capabilities for instance, or institutional reluctance to provide complete pictures, the result is the same. The public is asked to evaluate evidence with one hand tied behind its back. Congress recognized this problem. Section 1687 of the FY 2024 NDAA specifically mandated multi-source data inclusion in declassification reviews. Whether AARO has complied with the spirit of that mandate in this tranche is a question worth pressing. The 2020 Atlantic case is neither proof of the extraordinary nor a case easily dismissed. It is exactly what serious UAP investigation looks like in practice: ambiguous, incomplete, and demanding of more data. The responsible path forward involves three things: pressing AARO for the corroborating sensor data that almost certainly exists, waiting for Loeb's independent analysis before drawing conclusions, and holding the government to the congressional mandate for comprehensive disclosure. 58 seconds of infrared footage cannot resolve decades of questions. But the way we handle those 58 seconds, with rigor, patience, and precision, determines whether this field advances or stalls. The footage is out. The analysis has barely begun.